Good morning, scholars. I apologize that we're not able to meet in the classroom today, but I hope that this is going to work out for everyone. Welcome to Unit 6, Visual Art in Three Dimensions. As we discussed last week, today we're going to talk about sculpture, installation art, and architecture as forms of 3D art, or visual art in three dimensions. We're also going to be talking about the school of art called Italian Futurism. Now, there are many methods of making 3D art, but the ones that we're concerned with today are sculpture, installation art, and architecture. In its barest form, sculpture is manipulating materials to create a form, a three-dimensional representation or expression of an artist's idea. Examples of sculpture that we've looked at before included Michelangelo's David, the Willendorf Venus. Installation art is art that uses multiple objects in different mediums, even including things like sound or light, to take up a significant defined space. Whether it's an entire area or a subdivided area within a larger space, installations are specific to a particular site in some cases. In other cases, they're generic. That means that you can take an installation from one place to another. Architecture is an art form that not only provides our worldly needs, shelter, workspace, storage, but also reflects aesthetic or philosophical ideas of the artists. Architectural artists are called architects. For our example of sculpture, this is the terracotta army. Terracotta is a kind of ceramic. It's a fired clay that has been invented by many cultures around the world. This example is in China. This is called the Terracotta Army, and it dates from 209 to 210 BCE. In 1974, there was a collection of terracotta warriors discovered in Xi'an, China. Local farmers came across pieces of a clay figure, and as they dug to find more pieces, they discovered an ancient tomb that was huge. This vast tomb contained 8,000 life-size terracotta soldiers with 670 horses, 130 chariots, as well as a number of figures that had been vandalized, including some that had been burned by looters and opponents of the politician, the emperor, whose tomb was guarded by this army. The warriors are life-sized. Most are a little over 6 feet tall. They weigh up to 600 pounds each, and they have unique characteristics. So they have slightly different poses, facial features, different hairstyles. They're not just multiple copies. They are an army of 8,000 individual soldiers, all facing to the east, which is the direction that the enemies of the emperor had come from. Now, in recent years, some museums outside of China have hosted exhibitions with a small number of these terracotta warriors. Our ability to travel to the site and see them all in their installation, in the tomb where they were established, is limited. So a small number have been removed and travel around. The rest have been documented, and you can look online and see video and computer-generated models of the entire site. This is an example of installation art. Their placement in the tomb and the definition of that space helps define the artwork. A more explicit example, the terracotta warriors are sculptures. And although they're individually sculptures, together they form an installation. But you can have an installation artwork that is not a defined group of sculptures, but rather an existence of an artwork in a place. This is Spiral Jetty by Robert Smithson from 1970. And it actually sticks out from the shore on the northeastern shore of the Great Salt Lake on a place called Roselle Point. It's made of mud, salt crystals, and basalt stone, which was extracted from the site, so it's local stone. And it's 1,500 feet long and about 15 feet deep, 15 feet high from the base. In the 1960s and 70s, there was a counterculture movement. This was a movement against commercialism of the art world, and more radical revolutionary art forms were being investigated. This form, called land art by Robert Smithson, they went into the deserts, they created monumental works that acted with their surroundings. This site-specific approach, as it came to be known, very often used materials taken directly from the landscape. Now, what's really interesting about Spiral Jetty is that when it was made, it was very quickly and intentionally submerged under the lake so that you could see it below the surface. But a drought in the 2000s lowered the lake level and brought it to the surface again. In 2017, it was named the official artwork of the state of Utah. So we've looked at sculptures, and we've looked at how sculptures can blend into installations. Now let's look at architecture. Because architecture is specific to a site, it has elements of the installation to it. But it also, architecture creates buildings or monuments which can also contain artworks and objects within. So they can function on multiple levels as artworks. Here we see one of the most famous buildings in the world. This is the Taj Mahal, which is located in Agra, India. And you'll notice that not only is there the building and the spires that surround it, those domes or minarets that are part of the roofing of the building, but there's also a reflecting pond. This is designed so that at certain times of day, the reflection is very, very clearly displayed in the still waters of the pond, creating a mirrored element, an element of symmetry. But because the reflecting pond is very narrow, the pillars, the towers, are not reflected. So we have the combination of symmetry and breaking symmetry. We have that pattern exception that the human brain is so fond of. This is a style of art from the Mughal period. The Mughal Emperor Shah Jahan commissioned the Taj Mahal. It is a mausoleum. That is a tomb for his dead wife. We believe that the primary architect was Ustad Ahmad Lahori, also called Ahmad Mahar Lahori. We don't know for sure if he designed it, but he was in charge of construction of the emperor's projects during this period. And he constructed several monuments, including the Taj Mahal in Agra and the Red Fort in Delhi, both of which are UNESCO World Heritage Sites. That means that the UN has deemed them culturally significant to humanity, and they can't be messed with. Now, Mughal architecture combines influences from the regions that border central India. This includes elements of Persian, Indian, and Islamic cultures. So you see Persia, or what is now Iran. You see the neighboring Islamic areas, Pakistan, Afghanistan, Bangladesh, and several different cultures within what is now India all contribute elements. So this is a fusion artwork that shows the span and influence of the emperor. I hope these examples of three-dimensional visual art have been helpful. If you've done the reading, you have more information and more background on the techniques and the important elements, so I'm not going to go over them here. Remember, you are responsible for the reading every week. If you don't know where to find the reading, I've redone Canvas modules with a new links page for each module that makes it easier to find the presentations and all of the readings and assignments. Also, I heard that some of you were having trouble opening the presentations, and for other people, they were working fine. Rather than try and figure out what was going on, I've reformatted all of the presentations as Google Slides, and they are now available with a link that's in every Canvas module. And it's a folder. That link takes you to a Google Drive folder that has all of the slide presentations. And it's updated every week so the new ones are added. So if you ever need to look back at a previous presentation, that's where you can find them. Please, when you look at those presentations, check the view option that lets you see the speaker notes, because the speaker notes is where I put the information that we talk about in class for most of the slideshows, and I'm going back for the older ones and updating them as I have time. But that's where I put the information that I share with you guys, like I'm doing right now. That information about the different architectural influences in the Taj Mahal is in the presentation notes for this slide. So please look at those, especially if you miss a class and are trying to catch up on the lecture. Okay, so let's talk about Futurism, specifically Italian Futurism. It celebrated industrialization. This was a modern art movement. It looked at machines, steam, diesel, power plants, flying machines, locomotives. These were all considered elements of futuristic life. And they thought that the machine age would lead to a new world order, getting rid of classicism and the Renaissance and always looking back at the Enlightenment, always looking back at artists like Bouguereau. This goes beyond the Impressionists. They wanted to look not just to the present, but into the future. And they hoped that that would come with a renewed consciousness. By a renewed consciousness, a new awareness of the value of humanity, of the value of the workers and the working class. It was very much a left-leaning social movement along with Futurism. The Futurist Manifesto is published in Paris in 1909, but it's by an Italian. This is 5 years before the beginning of the Great War, World War I. They obviously have no idea that the war is coming. They're pushing for change and revolution, and they had no idea how much the world was going to change in the next 10 years. Now, Umberto Boccioni created this statue called Unique Forms of Continuity in Space. And if it looks very disjointed or disconnected, he's trying to capture movement and changes in position and shape over time in a single sculpture. If you think of the way the Impressionists tried to capture a specific moment, an impression of light, and the way light moved and changed on surfaces, the Futurists are trying to do the same thing with physical form in time. So we've added a temporal or chronological element. Okay? So they look at rhythms and sensations and tempo as being elements not just of music or poetry, but of visual art as well. Now, Futurism had the very bad luck to be born just before Europe is torn apart by war. To make matters worse, a lot of the Futurists backed the losing sides. They backed the Italian socialists. They backed, after the war, during Reconstruction between World War I and World War II, they backed the fascists who took control in Italy and Germany and other places in the world. There was a fascist movement here in the United States during the 1930s. And if you ever watch a World War II movie, essentially the bad guys are the ones who Italian Futurists identified with, for reasons both good and bad. But obviously that really negatively impacted the future of their own movement. Now, these are some prints that were recently exhibited at Reading House Museum. I don't have artist information and details, but if we look at this this diver, look at the contortion of the torso. His chest is almost directly facing the audience, right? The viewer. His right arm is backwards. His face is slightly to our right, his left. But then look at his body. His lower body, his legs, and his butt are twisted so that we see the physical form and the shape of the muscles. He's trying to capture multiple sides, multiple impressions of this physical movement of a body through space over time. If you're familiar at all with Cubism, we're starting to see some of the early elements of Cubism here as well. And there is a connection between the Cubists and the Italian Futurists. Now, here, notice that the figures are pretty much identical. They're in almost identical poses. The overlaps are slightly different. If you look at the elbows and where the elbows are in relation to the chests of the figure behind, you'll see that they're not exactly the same. If you look at the hands are of slightly different sizes because they're at slightly different angles. So there's an attempt to capture individuals and uniformity together. Positive and negative space are also very important. The contrasts between the teal, the medium blue, the black, the brown backgrounds. Okay, this is something that you can look at, and you can probably pull more out of it with those elemental analysis, like we talked about in previous two-dimensional art. And finally, here we see a two-dimensional artwork that is a plan for a bronze sculpture. So this is a preliminary sketch. It's charcoal on newspaper. They literally just grabbed a page off the newspaper and sketched out in charcoal the plans for a bronze statue. Even the two-dimensional art of the Italian Futurists played with the idea of three-dimensionality through forms. Remember when we did shape and form, we talked about how in two-dimensional art you can use shading and contrast in color and depth and focus to create the illusion of three dimensions. Here's a really good example of that. Here we have futurist elements. We have flying boats. Those are Caprioni flying boats that were built in Italy in the 1930s. They were used for passenger transportation, and there was actually seats all the way out into the wings, and they landed on the lakes in Switzerland and Italy and provided transportation. But if you look, we have the pyramid, right, with its shading, but we also have the vertical steps. If you look at the kind of cactus shape, the crosses there, those things, those are Fasces. Fasces are essentially a stylized bundle of sticks that were the representation of fascism. This is where the fascists get their name. Fascists are authoritarian, anti-democratic, pro-labor, pro-social political movement. Benito Mussolini took over Italy and very much inspired Adolf Hitler and his takeover of Germany, and then annexation of Austria and Czechoslovakia and the beginning of World War II. Like I said, they made a lot of bad choices when it came to political statements and allies. But you can't deny that the artwork itself is striking. Notice how the overlapping shades here create complex three-dimensionality. It's very clearly there's shadow and highlight, but you can't exactly make out the shapes because there's enough overlap, because we're seeing multiple times as well as multiple forms. Okay. I know that's been super quick since we didn't have discussion today. Let's talk about Unit 7 next week. Class is March 5th? I want to say March 5th. It says here the discussion questions are due March 7th. That is an error. They are due March 1st. They're Friday. Okay? So I apologize that I had not get a chance to refigure this yet. But if you look at the link in the folder and Canvas and at the assignment, they are correct. So you have a discussion question. That's due March 1st. That's this Friday before midnight. Please, please get your discussions in on time. The average student in this class is losing 15 points per post. That's 15 out of 60. That's 25% off. The average student's losing 25% of their points by turning in stuff late. The late amnesty is over, so those points are coming off your assignments now. If you're serious about getting your grade, do what I ask you to do as best as you can do it when I ask you to do it. That was our deal at the beginning of the year. So get your discussions turned in, get your replies turned in, make sure it's your own work, make sure that it's original and critical thinking. Express yourself as clearly as you can. If you have a complicated idea, don't dumb the idea down. I'd rather have you express a good idea kind of awkwardly than have a great expression of a lousy idea. Okay? I am very forgiving when I see that you're trying, as are your classmates, I'm sure. So, you have your discussion question for this unit. It's due Friday, March 1st. Next Tuesday, it's our last class before spring break. It is the midterm. We will not be taking the midterm in class because your midterm is due on Monday, March 4th. We will be having our discussion of music and some musical entertainment during class. A nice break before our break. But I need you to do the reading. It's Chapter 7, Unit 1, Melody, Harmony, and Scales. There are 8 subsections, each about a page. So you got about 8 pages of reading to do between now and next Tuesday, March 5th. I want you to come into class having read this, and if you can't remember things you read, I expect you to have written notes, either on hard copy or on your laptop or on your phone or on your tablet, that you can pull up and be ready to participate. So, just to recap, your midterm, the music playlist project, is due Monday, March 4th. Some people have had questions about Spotify. They want to use Apple Music. A couple people wanted to use, somebody tried to submit a Google Doc that just had links to different songs that they found on YouTube. The first instruction says, create a Spotify playlist. Yes, you must use Spotify. The reason we're all using Spotify is because that way everyone is using the same tool. Nobody has an advantage or disadvantage. It's free. The basic free account gives you everything you need. And somebody said that they couldn't use Spotify because they couldn't install the app. You don't have to use the app. You just point your browser at spotify.com and use the online web version. It'll let you do everything you need to do for the assignment. And again, it's free. We're not doing the commentaries. We're just doing the playlist. Okay. The first 10 songs here we discussed in class. Important thing to note for number 4, it says a song written more than 100 years ago. Check when the piece was written, not when it was performed. You could have a song that's 500 years old that somebody recorded yesterday and it would be acceptable, but it has to have been written before 1924. Okay? Anything before 1924 would be acceptable. Second group of 10 songs. Remember that you can use multiple pieces from one artist, but you can't use the same performance more than once. Okay? So, if you used, I don't know, let's see, Aha's Take on Me, recorded in the 80s, for number 11, something you associate with a time in your life, you couldn't also use it for 21, a song that is loved by a friend or family member. Okay? So don't repeat the songs except for the cover versions, which we talked about before. Only include songs available through Spotify for this assignment. If that means, oh, well, this is my favorite song and it's not on Spotify, well, then choose your second or third or fourth favorite song. Find one that fits the requirements. I can't stress this enough. I hope you know I love and care about you, and I want you to be successful, okay? But I can only write the material and give you guys the support to answer the questions. I can't submit stuff for you. Turn in your midterm on time. It counts for 10% of your final grade. It's 10% off per day it's late. If you turn in 10 days late, so like if you wait till after spring break to turn this thing in, okay, 10 days late is 100% off. That means a 0. That's 10% off your final grade. Say you've been cruising along with a 75. Not great, but you're passing. And then you don't turn this in. Well, now you've got a 65 in my class, and you're going to fail. I don't want that to happen to anybody. Please, please. Now, this brings me to my last point. There is an assignment that's due called check-in for this module. And it's a fill in the blank. Here's what you need to fill in the blank for that assignment. Listen carefully. You need to put the name of my cat in the blank so that I know that you listened and you paid attention. Now, if you're thinking, Professor Cafiero, I don't remember the name of your cat, or I was absent the days you talked about your cat. Well, the cat's been in presentations, but for those of you who don't remember, his name is Taco Cat. Tacoat. Okay, this is what happens when I'm tired. Tacocat. I left the C out. Taco Cat. All one word. If you spell it backwards, it's Taco Cat. So, in the blank for the check-in assignment for Unit 6, just write Taco Cat. Capital T, ACOCAT, all one word. And you will get credit for 100% participation for today and for attendance for today. I hope they have the AC fixed. I hope that you guys are not inconvenienced in your other classes. And most of all, I hope you have a good and safe week. I know some of you are still battling health problems, whether physical or just mental and emotional. It all counts. Take care of yourselves. Stay safe, do good, and be well. Thank you for your work. I will see you guys next week.